The council chamber floated in the void between stars, a massive ring of metal and light that housed the last hope of 47 civilizations. Ambassador Thelaxis stood before the assembled leaders, his forearms trembling slightly as he prepared to speak words that many would consider treason. "We are dying," he said simply. The translation devices carried his words to every species present, each hearing it in their own language. 12 systems have fallen in 6 months. 3 billion souls consumed by the Vextor swarm. Our fleets retreat after every engagement. Our weapons barely slow them down. High Commander Zeknor rose from his seat, his scaled skin shifting through angry colors. "We know this, Ambassador. Why waste our time with facts we live with every day?" Thelaxis touched a control on his wrist. A star map appeared above the council floor, showing the Galactic Concord's territory in blue and the Vextor advance in sickly green. The green was spreading like a disease. "Because I have a solution," Thelaxis said. "One that terrifies me to even suggest." The chamber fell silent. Even the constant hum of the station's system seemed to quiet. "There is a species," Thelaxis continued, "that was quarantined 200 years ago. A species so violent, so dangerously unstable, that we sealed their entire star system behind warning buoys and forbidden any contact. Counselor Veshna, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline form, pulsed with alarm. "You cannot mean humanity," Thelaxis finished. "Yes, I mean the humans of Sol system." The chamber erupted. Voices overlapped in a dozen languages, but the translation devices caught the important parts. Savage, dangerous, insane. Deathworlders. Zeknor's voice cut through the chaos. "They nearly destroyed our first contact team. They captured our ship, imprisoned our diplomats, and threatened war if we did not meet their demands. These are not rational beings." "They thought we were invaders," Thelaxis said calmly. "Our ship entered their system without permission and began scanning their homeworld. By their standards, we committed an act of war. Once we explained ourselves properly, they released our people unharmed. After holding them for 3 months, another counselor shouted. Thelaxis nodded. "Yes, 3 months while they learned our language, studied our culture, and decided if we were a threat." Can you imagine? A species that had never left their own star system, capturing a vessel with technology centuries beyond their own, and treating it as a diplomatic incident rather than a miracle. He pulled up another display. This one showed Earth, a blue and green marble that looked deceptively peaceful. This is their homeworld. Gravity 1.3 times what most of us consider comfortable, atmospheric oxygen levels that would be toxic to 8 of our member species, oceans that cover 70% of the surface filled with predators, weather patterns that generate storms capable of leveling cities, tectonic activity that regularly devastates entire regions. The display changed to show various Earth creatures, a great white shark, a polar bear, a saltwater crocodile, an African lion. "These are their fellow inhabitants," Thelaxis said.
"Humanity evolved alongside predators that could tear them apart.
They survived ice ages, plagues, supervolcano eruptions, and asteroid impacts. Their entire history is one of survival against impossible odds." Veshna pulsed thoughtfully. "What does this have to do with the Vextor?" "Everything," Thelaxis said. He pulled up human historical records, images of war and conflict stretching back millennia. While we developed philosophy, art, and mathematics, humanity developed warfare. They have 10,000 years of recorded combat. They fought each other continuously, developing tactics and weapons that would horrify us. Poison gas, nuclear weapons, biological agents. They have destroyed entire cities just to prove a point. "This is supposed to convince us?" Zeknor asked. "They also developed honor, sacrifice, and courage," Thelaxis replied. "They created concepts like holding the line and no one left behind. They write stories about outnumbered warriors standing against overwhelming odds, and these stories inspire them to actually do it. They are by every measure insane, but they are also survivors." The chamber was quiet now, the counselors listening despite their fear. "The Vextor cannot be reasoned with," Thelaxis said. "They cannot be bargained with or frightened away. They are a force of nature, consuming everything in their path. We have tried diplomacy, superior technology, and strategic retreat. Nothing works. We need something we have never needed before." "What?" Veshna asked. "Warriors," Thelaxis said. "Not soldiers. Not defenders. Warriors who understand that sometimes survival requires violence. Deathworlders who look at impossible odds and charge forward anyway. Zeknor stood again. And if they turn on us? If we unleash these humans and they decide the galaxy would be better under their control? Thelaxis met his gaze. Then we will face that threat when it comes. But right now there will be no galaxy left to control if we do nothing. The Vextor will consume us all within a year. Every model, every simulation says the same thing. We are finished. The vote took 3 hours. It passed by the smallest possible margin. 15 counselors walked out in protest. But the decision was made, the message was crafted carefully. A distress call, a plea for help, and most importantly, full disclosure of what they faced. Thelaxis insisted on honesty. If humanity came, they deserved to know what they were fighting. The signal was sent to Sol System, to a place called Luna Command, where humanity's military forces waited in the darkness. 3 days later, a response came back. Just 5 words, but they echoed through the council chamber like thunder. We're coming. Hold the line. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the command deck of the UNS Indomitable, watching Earth recede in the view screen. Around her, the greatest military force humanity had ever assembled was moving into formation. 300 warships, each one built with hard lessons learned from centuries of human conflict. She was 52 years old, with gray streaking her black hair and scars on her face from a pirate raid that had killed her daughter 15 years ago. She had fought in the Martian Independence War, the Titan Rebellion, and a dozen smaller conflicts. She knew war. She knew its cost. Admiral, her executive officer said. Fleet reports ready for jump. Chen looked at the tactical display. 300 ships. 50,000 crew members. Another 100,000 Marines ready for deployment. It was not a rescue mission. It was an invasion force aimed at an enemy humanity had never met. Did the crew get the full briefing? She asked. Yes, ma'am. They know what we're facing. They know it's likely to be a one-way trip for many of us. Chen nodded slowly. And? Morale is high, Admiral. They're ready to fight. Of course they were. Humanity had always been ready to fight. It was what they were good at. Send a message to the fleet, Chen said. Tell them this. We go into the unknown to fight for people we've never met. We do this because someone asked for help, and we are the only ones who answered. Make sure they understand what that means. We are humanity's representatives now. How we fight, how we conduct ourselves, will determine how the galaxy sees our entire species. She paused, thinking of her daughter, of all the people lost to violence over the years. But make sure they also understand this. We will win, because we are human and we do not know how to quit. The executive officer saluted. Yes, ma'am. Chen turned back to the view screen. Somewhere out in the darkness, 47 civilizations were dying. They had called out for help in desperation. Not knowing what they were summoning, they were about to find out. All ships, Chen said. Jump on my mark, 3-2-1 on mark. The fleet vanished into the depths of space, carrying humanity's answer to the stars. The human fleet emerged from jump space like a swarm of angry hornets, their drives burning bright against the darkness. Terminus Prime hung in the distance, a fortress world surrounded by the wreckage of 100 battles. Beyond it, the Vextor swarm moved like a living nightmare, their bioships pulsing with sickly organic light. High Commander Zeknor watched from the command station, his scales shifting through colors he could not control: fear, disgust, and something he would not admit even to. Himself, hope, analysis of human vessels, he ordered. The tactical officer's voice shook slightly. Commander, their ships, they have no energy shields. What? No shields, sir. Instead, they have armor. Thick metal plating covering every surface. And their weapons, sir, they're using kinetic projectiles. Actual physical ammunition. Zeknor stared at the display. No shields meant one hit could cripple a ship. Kinetic weapons were short range and required getting close to the enemy. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. A communication request appeared on his screen. Human origin. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Nations ship Indomitable, a voice said. The translation was rough but understandable. We received your distress call. What's the tactical situation? Zeknor activated his communicator. Admiral Chen, this is High Commander Zeknor. The Vextor have surrounded Terminus Prime. We are holding for now, but our defenses are weakening. We cannot, how many ships do they have? Chen interrupted. Approximately 800 bioships of various sizes. There was a pause. Then Chen said something that made Zeknor question whether humans understood mathematics. Good. They're outnumbered. Before Zeknor could respond, the human fleet began to move. They did not form a defensive line as he expected. They did not position themselves for maximum firing range. Instead, they accelerated directly toward the Vextor swarm. "They're attacking," the tactical officer said, his voice rising. "All ships, full speed toward the enemy." Zeknor watched in horror as the human fleet charged forward. The Vextor, sensing new prey, turned a portion of their swarm to meet them. 200 bioships moved to intercept. The first Vextor acid projectiles struck the human ships. The ship's armor buckled and melted but held. The humans did not slow down. At what Zeknor would have considered suicidal range, the human ships opened fire. Railgun rounds tore through bioship hulls. Missiles with nuclear warheads detonated in massive fireballs. Energy weapons carved burning lines through organic tissue. Then the humans did something Zeknor had never seen in his 40 years of military service. One of their smaller ships, already damaged and trailing atmosphere, accelerated even faster. It slammed directly into a Vextor bioship at a significant fraction of light speed. Both ships vaporized in a flash of energy. "Did they?" The tactical officer could not finish the sentence. "They did," Zeknor whispered. "They deliberately crashed their own ship." More human ships pressed forward. They were not trying to maintain formation or protect their flanks. They were fighting like they did not expect to survive. Like every ship was a weapon to be expended. A human cruiser took critical damage. Its hull breached in a dozen places. Instead of retreating, it turned toward the largest Vextor bioship in range and fired every weapon it had, burning out its own power systems in the process. Then it detonated its reactor. The explosion took out 4 Vextor ships. "They're mad," Zeknor said. "Completely mad, but they were also winning." The Vextor, for all their numbers and ferocity, had never faced an enemy that treated death as just another tactic. They began to pull back, confused by prey that did not run. Admiral Chen's voice came over the command channel, broadcasting to all ships. "UNS Thermopylae and Marathon are boarding the disabled bioship. All nearby vessels provide covering fire." "Boarding?" Zeknor said out loud. "They're going to board a Vextor ship?" 2 human vessels latched onto a wounded bioship. Armored figures began cutting through the organic hull, disappearing into the alien vessel. Zeknor pulled up a closer view and felt his blood run cold. The humans were fighting inside the bioship. He could see them through breaches in the hull, their armored suits moving through corridors filled with Vextor drones. They carried weapons that fired metal bullets and threw explosives that filled the tight spaces with fire. A Vextor drone, each one the size of a small vehicle, charged at a human soldier. The human did not retreat. Instead, the soldier shot the drone's legs, dropped the rifle, and pulled out a large knife. When the drone fell, the human jumped on top of it and stabbed it repeatedly until it stopped moving. "What kind of species fights like that?" the tactical officer whispered. Zeknor had no answer. Captain Marcus Wu led his Marines through the bioship's intestinal corridors, his helmet display highlighting targets in red. The air was toxic, the gravity was wrong, and the walls were literally trying to digest them. It was, he decided, a pretty standard Tuesday. "Contact 11 o'clock, Sergeant Park shouted. Wu turned and fired his rifle in one smooth motion. The Vextor drone exploded in a spray of green fluid. 2 more came from the ceiling. His Marines opened fire, filling the corridor with tracer rounds. "Keep moving," Wu ordered. "We need to reach the nerve cluster before this thing realizes we're inside." They had been training for this moment for 15 years. Ever since humanity realized they might not be alone in the universe. Every Marine had studied alien biology, practiced fighting in hostile environments, and learned to operate in conditions that would kill most people. The Vextor were tough, but they had a weakness. Every bioship had a central nerve cluster that controlled its functions. Destroy that and the ship died. Wu's team rounded a corner and came face to face with 10 Vextor drones. His Marines did not hesitate. They charged forward, firing as they ran. 3 Marines fell to acid spray, their armor melting, but the rest pushed through. Wu reached the nerve cluster, a pulsing mass of tissue the size of a car. He armed the plasma charge and threw it into the center. Everyone out. Now, his team ran. Behind them, the charge detonated and the entire bioship shuddered. The walls stopped moving. The lights dimmed. The ship was dead. They reached their entry point and jumped back to the transport, magnetic boots locking onto the hull. Wu did a quick count. He had started with 20 Marines. 14 made it back. "Good work," he said quietly. "Good work." Back on Terminus Prime, Zeknor watched as the Vextor began to retreat. Not a tactical withdrawal, actual retreat. The swarm was pulling back from a battle for the first time since the war began. The human fleet pursued them, firing as they went, not letting up even as their own ships trailed debris and atmosphere. Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired. Her uniform was stained with something dark and there was a cut on her forehead. "Hi, Commander," she said. "Terminus Prime is secure. We're setting up a defensive perimeter. I'm sending damage reports to your tactical staff." "Admiral, you lost—" "Let me check. 43 ships in that engagement," Chen nodded. "Yes, 14,000 crew members. We're still counting the wounded. And you consider this a victory?" Chen's expression did not change. "We saved Terminus Prime. We stopped the Vextor advance." "Yes, Commander, this is a victory. This is what victory costs." Zeknor felt something break inside him. These humans had traveled across the galaxy to fight for people they did not know, and they treated catastrophic losses as acceptable. "I don't understand your species," he said honestly. Chen smiled, but there was no happiness in it. "We're from a world that tried to kill us every single day, Commander. We learned a long time ago that survival isn't about avoiding death. It's about making sure death means something." The communication ended. Zeknor sat in his command chair, watching the human ships take up defensive positions around Terminus Prime. Each one was damaged, scarred, and battered. But they were still there, still fighting. He pulled up the historical files Thel-Axis had shared, the ones about human warfare. He had dismissed them before as exaggeration. Now he knew better. Humanity had been quarantined because they were dangerous, but dangerous might be exactly what the galaxy needed. For the first time in months, Zeknor allowed himself to believe they might actually survive this war. The Vextor swarm regrouped in the darkness beyond Terminus Prime, their collective consciousness processing this new threat. The prey fought back. The prey was dangerous. The prey destroyed ships. This required adaptation. This required evolution. The swarm began to change, developing new tactics specifically for fighting these violent newcomers. The war was far from over, but for the first time neither side was certain of victory. Ambassador Thel-Axis walked through the human medical bay, trying not to show his discomfort. The injured lay in rows, some missing limbs, others covered in regeneration foam. What disturbed him most was not the injuries but the fact that the humans were joking with each other. "Lost my arm stopping a drone," one Marine said, grinning. "But you should see the other guy." "Actually, you can't. He's in about 1,000 pieces," the others laughed. They laughed while surrounded by the wounded and dying. A human doctor noticed Thel-Axis and walked over. "Ambassador, can I help you?" "I wanted to understand," Thel-Axis said. "How do your people cope with such losses?" The doctor looked at the wounded Marines. "We remember why we fight, and we make sure their sacrifice meant something. Your species treats death very differently than we do, because we've lived with it our whole existence." The doctor gestured for Thel-Axis to follow. "Let me show you something." They walked to a quiet observation room. The doctor activated a display showing Earth. "This is our home," she said. "Do you know what the leading cause of death was for humans just 500 years ago?" "War?" Thel-Axis guessed. "Disease, followed by weather, wild animals, other humans, accidents, and then war. We evolved on a planet that was actively trying to kill us. Gravity strong enough to break bones from a simple fall. Predators that hunted us. Bacteria and viruses that we couldn't see. We didn't have natural armor, venom, or claws. We were slow compared to most predators. Weak compared to most large animals. Then how did you survive?" "We thought about it. We planned. We worked together. And we never ever gave up." The doctor pulled up images of human history. "We survived ice ages by making clothing and fire. We survived predators by creating weapons. We survived disease by developing medicine. Every single generation of humans has faced something that could destroy us, and every single generation found a way to survive." Thel-Axis looked at the images. Humans building shelters. Humans hunting animals 10 times their size. Humans crossing oceans on primitive boats. Humans launching themselves into space. "You were persistence hunters," he said, remembering his research. "Yes, we couldn't run faster than our prey, so we followed them for days until they collapsed from exhaustion. We couldn't fight stronger predators directly, so we wounded them and tracked them until they died. We learned that if you just keep going, keep pushing, eventually everything breaks. Everything except us. The doctor switched the display to human biology. Our bodies reflect this. We have redundant systems for everything important. 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, hearts that can keep beating even when damaged. We produce adrenaline when threatened, which lets us ignore pain and perform feats of strength that would normally be impossible. We can lose 1/3 of our blood and still fight. We can break bones and keep moving. We can go days without sleep when necessary. This seems excessive. For a normal world, yes. For Earth, it was the minimum required to survive. The doctor smiled sadly. Do you know what humans fear most, Ambassador? Death? No, we fear dying without purpose. We fear failing to protect those we love. We fear giving up. She gestured to the wounded Marines. Those people in there are not laughing because they don't care about their injuries. They're laughing because they survived, because they fought well, and because their friends survived alongside them. That's what matters to us. Thelaxis was quiet for a long moment. Your species is very strange. Yes, the doctor agreed. But we're here, and we're going to help you win this war. Later, Thelaxis attended a briefing with Admiral Chen and High Commander Zeknor. The room was filled with both human and conquered military officers, an uncomfortable mixture of species who eyed each other warily. Chen activated a tactical display showing the current war situation. The Vextor are adapting to our tactics. They're becoming more cautious, harder to draw into close combat. We need a new approach. A conquered tactical officer spoke up. Admiral, with respect, your tactics rely on accepting heavy casualties. This is not sustainable. Every tactic has a cost, Chen replied. The question is whether you're willing to pay it. We are not willing to sacrifice entire crews for minor tactical advantages. Chen leaned forward. Then you've already lost. The Vextor don't care about casualties. They don't retreat to save their forces. They only care about consuming and growing. If you're not willing to match their commitment, you can't beat them. Zeknor intervened. Admiral Chen raises a valid point even if the delivery is harsh. We have been fighting defensively for too long. We need to take the initiative. Agreed, Chen said. She changed the display to show a map of Vextor-controlled space. We've identified 3 key systems that serve as hub points for their expansion. If we hit all 3 simultaneously, we can disrupt their logistics and slow their advance. A 3-pronged assault would require dividing our forces, a conquered officer protested. Yes, Chen said, which is why we're going to teach you to fight like humans. Over the next few weeks, human instructors began training Concord forces in aggressive tactics. It did not go well at first. Captain Wu watched a group of Concord soldiers practice boarding maneuvers. They moved carefully, checking every corner, maintaining formation. It was textbook military procedure. It was also too slow. Stop! Wu called out. The soldiers froze. You're treating this like a training exercise. In a real boarding action, the enemy will be shooting at you. They'll be trying to kill you. You need to move faster, be more aggressive. A young Concord soldier spoke up. But Captain, moving faster means taking more risks. We could be injured or killed. Yes, Wu said flatly. You could be. That's the point. You have to decide what matters more, your personal safety or completing the mission. The soldier looked uncomfortable. Both should matter, Wu sighed. This was the fundamental difference between humans and most Concord species. He tried a different approach. Let me ask you something. If you die but your actions save your squad, is that a good trade? The soldier hesitated. I don't know. For a human, the answer is yes. Always yes. We value the group over the individual. We're pack animals, tribal by nature. We'd rather die than let our tribe die. Wu activated a display showing human military history. Do you know what these are? Medal of Honor citations, awards given to human soldiers who sacrificed themselves to save others. We have thousands of them. We celebrate people who threw themselves on grenades to save their friends, who held defensive positions alone against overwhelming odds to let others escape, who crashed their aircraft into enemy targets rather than let them reach their destinations. The conquered soldiers stared at the images with something like horror. We don't do this because we don't value life, Wu continued. We do it because we value purpose. A meaningless death is a tragedy, but a death that saves others, that accomplishes something important, that's what we call heroic. One of the soldiers, braver than the others, asked, How do you cope with the fear? Wu smiled. We don't. We feel fear just like you. But we learned a long time ago that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done despite the fear. Now let's run the drill again. And this time move like your squad's lives depend on it, because they do. The training continued. Slowly, grudgingly, the conquered forces began to adapt. They learned to shoot while moving. They learned to take calculated risks. They learned that sometimes the best defense was a strong offense. Not all of them accepted it. Some requested transfers, some called it barbaric. But enough stayed, enough learned, that the combined forces began to function as a single military unit. Admiral Chen met with Ambassador Thelaxis one evening, sharing a drink in a quiet observation room. Outside, stars drifted past in the darkness. "Your people are changing mine," Thelaxis said quietly. "I'm not sure if that's good or bad." Chen took a sip of her drink. "War changes everyone. The question is whether you become something better or something worse. And which will we become? That depends on what you do after the war ends." Chen looked at the stars. "Humans have fought so many wars that we've learned something important. Victory without honor is hollow. Strength without compassion is tyranny. Your people called us to fight, but don't let fighting be all you learn from us." "What else should we learn?" Chen smiled. "That strength comes in many forms. Yes, we're good at violence, but we're also good at healing, building, and protecting. We fight hard because we love deeply. We risk death because we value life. Don't forget the second part when you're learning the first." Thelaxis considered this. "You're more complex than I expected. Most species are when you take the time to understand them." Chen finished her drink. "Now let's talk strategy. I think I've figured out how to hit those 3 hub systems simultaneously." As they planned, neither noticed the young Concord officer outside the observation room, listening to every word. He would remember this conversation later, when the war reached its darkest moments. He would remember that humans fought not because they loved war, but because they loved what they were fighting for. It was a subtle but important distinction, and it would make all the difference. Operation Hammerfall launched at dawn across 3 different star systems simultaneously. The combined fleet, human and Conquered forces working together for the first time, struck at the heart of Vextor territory. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching 3 tactical displays showing each battlefront. The plan was bold, some would say reckless, but careful strategies had not worked. "It was time to be reckless. All forces engage," she ordered. In the Kepler 442 system, Captain Wu led a boarding force onto a massive Vextor command ship. His team had grown to include Conquered soldiers now, warriors who had learned to fight with human aggression. "Move, move, move," Wu shouted as they breached the hull. Acid spray filled the corridor, melting armor and flesh alike. 3 soldiers went down screaming, but the rest pushed forward, firing continuously. A Concord soldier named Kreshna fought beside Wu, his 4 arms wielding weapons with deadly precision. Weeks ago, he would have retreated from such overwhelming opposition. Now he advanced because his human squad mates were advancing, and he would not let them fight alone. "Nerve cluster ahead," someone called out. They rounded the corner and found it defended by 50 Vextor drones, each the size of a bear and covered in natural armor. It was impossible. They would all die. Wu charged anyway. His squad followed without hesitation. Human and Conquered fighting together, dying together. The battle was brutal and short. When the smoke cleared, 30 soldiers lay dead or dying. But the nerve cluster was destroyed. Wu knelt beside Kreshna, who had taken acid spray across his torso. The Conquered soldier was dying, his multiple hearts failing one by one. "Did we win?" Kreshna asked weakly. "Yeah," Wu said, his voice tight. "We won." "Good." Kreshna's eyes closed. "Tell my podmates I died well, like a human." Wu stayed with him until the end. It was the human thing to do. In the Gliese 581 system, the Vextor had prepared a trap. They had learned from human tactics and deployed their own version of a suicide run. Bioships laden with explosives rushed the fleet, trying to get close enough to detonate. High Commander Zeknor found himself in command when the flagship's captain was killed by a random strike. He stared at the tactical display, watching bioships approach his vessel. The human protocol was clear: ramming speed. Take as many with you as possible. But this was his ship. His crew, could he give that order? A human tactical officer spoke up. "Commander, we have 5 seconds to decide. Either we ram them or they ram us." Zeknor had spent his whole life avoiding this moment, but he had also spent weeks watching humans make this choice over and over. "All power to engines," he ordered. "Ramming speed." The bridge crew, a mixture of species, carried out the order without question. The flagship accelerated toward the bioship cluster. At the last moment, Zeknor fired every weapon they had, detonating the explosives early. The shockwave nearly tore the flagship apart, but they survived. The bioships did not. Zeknor sat back in his command chair, his scales cycling through colors too quickly to follow. He had just ordered a suicide run and survived. He understood now why humans seemed so fearless. It was not that they did not fear death. It was that they feared failure more. In the Ross 128 system, things were going wrong. The Vextor had concentrated a massive force, more than intelligence had predicted. The combined fleet was being overwhelmed. Admiral Chen watched the casualty reports climb. They were losing. Badly, ma'am, her executive officer said quietly. We should retreat. We've lost 40% of our forces. Chen knew he was right. By any reasonable military standard, they should withdraw, regroup, and try again. But she also knew that retreating now would give the Vextor time to reinforce all three systems. Operation Hammerfall would fail. She thought of her daughter, dead 15 years because Chen had not been there to protect her. She thought of all the Concord civilians who would die if they failed today. She thought of the price of victory. No, Chen said. We hold. Send a message to all ships. Anyone who wants to retreat has permission to do so. But I'm staying and I'm taking these bastards with me. She did not expect what happened next. Every single ship, human and Concord alike, sent the same response. We're with you, Admiral. Chen felt something break inside her chest, but she did not have time for emotion. All ships, maximum aggression. Target their command ships. If we're going to die, we're taking their leadership with us. The fleet surged forward. Ships that were already damaged, already losing atmosphere and crew, pushed their engines past safe limits. They were not fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to hurt the enemy as much as possible before the end. It was humanity's oldest tactic. If you cannot win, make victory cost too much. The Vextor, sensing final victory, pressed their advantage. Their bioships surrounded the combined fleet, cutting off retreat. It was a killing box and there was no escape. Then something unexpected happened. Captain Marcus Wu's team, having destroyed the nerve cluster in Kepler 442, had captured a Vextor communication device. They discovered something critical. The Vextor Queen was not in one of the three hub systems. She was in a fourth location, a fortress world they had been using as their main base. Wu transmitted the coordinates to all forces. The Queen is at Vex Prime. Repeat, we have the Queen's location. Admiral Chen saw the coordinates appear on her display. A fortress world, heavily defended, deeper into Vextor territory than any fleet had ever gone. It would be suicide to attack, which meant it was exactly what they needed to do. All ships, Chen broadcast, fall back to Terminus Prime. We have new intelligence. The retreat was costly. Many ships could not disengage. They stayed behind, fighting to let the others escape. Chen watched on her tactical display as ship after ship went dark, their crews giving their lives so others could survive. By the time they reached Terminus Prime, the combined fleet had lost 60% of its forces. 47,000 humans were dead or missing, another 89,000 wounded. The Concord losses were similarly devastating, but they had accomplished something important. They had hurt the Vextor. They had proven that the swarm could be beaten. And most importantly, they knew where the Queen was located. In the conference room, Chen laid out her plan. It was called Plan Ragnarok, named after an old Earth myth about the end of the world. The Queen is the swarm's central consciousness, Chen explained. Kill her and the Vextor fragment into individual ship intelligences. They'll still be dangerous, but they won't be coordinated. They become a manageable threat instead of an extinction-level event. And how do you propose we reach her? Zeknor asked. Vex Prime has defenses that make our hub system assaults look easy. Chen pulled up the tactical analysis. We don't all need to reach her. Just a small strike force needs to penetrate the core while the main fleet holds off reinforcements. 500 of our best fighters, human and Concord, armed with the heaviest weapons we have. A suicide mission, Ambassador Thelaxis said quietly. Yes, Chen agreed. I won't pretend otherwise. Survival probability is less than 5%. But if we succeed, we end this war. The room was silent. The weight of what she was proposing settled over everyone like a heavy blanket. I'll lead the strike force, Chen said. I won't order anyone to do something I'm not willing to do myself. Admiral, you're the fleet commander, her executive officer protested. We need you in overall command. Then someone else will command the fleet. This mission requires someone who understands how to fight against impossible odds. That's me. Over the next 2 days, Chen called for volunteers. She needed 500. Over 10,000 stepped forward, human and Concord alike. She chose carefully. The best fighters, yes, but also those who understood what they were volunteering for. Those who had come to terms with their mortality. Those who were willing to die so others could live. Captain Wu was one of the first selected. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Admiral. Krishna's podmate, a Concord warrior named Veshital, volunteered despite having no military experience. My brother died learning to fight like a human. I will honor his memory by doing the same. Even High Commander Zeknor volunteered, though Chen ultimately declined. I need you commanding the defensive fleet, but I appreciate the offer. The night before they left, Chen walked through the ship, checking on her strike force. They were preparing in their own ways. Some wrote letters to loved ones, some checked their weapons one more time, some simply sat quietly thinking. She found Captain Wu in the armory, sharpening his combat knife with methodical care. That won't help much against a bioship, she observed. Wu smiled. No, but it makes me feel better. Old habit from my father. He was a Marine too. Always said a sharp blade reflected a sharp mind. Are you scared? Chen asked. Terrified, Wu admitted. But that's good. Fear means you're still human. It's when you stop being afraid that you should worry. Chen sat down beside him. I lost my daughter 15 years ago. Pirates raided our transport. I was commanding a patrol 3 systems away. By the time I got there, it was over. I'm sorry. I swore I'd never let that happen again, that I'd protect people even if it cost me everything. She looked at her hands. Tomorrow I'm going to make good on that promise, Wu nodded. Then it's a good day to die. It's always a good day to die, Chen replied, if you die for the right reasons. Vex Prime hung in space like a diseased moon, its surface covered in organic structures that pulsed with alien life. Defense platforms surrounded it in layers, each one a living weapon designed to destroy anything that approached. It was, by any measure, impenetrable. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her assault carrier, watching the nightmare world grow larger on the view screen. Behind her ship, 499 other warriors prepared for what would likely be their last battle. All ships, status report, she ordered. The responses came quickly. Everyone was ready. Equipment checked, weapons loaded, peace made with death. High Commander Zeknor, are you in position? Chen asked. From orbit around a nearby moon, Zeknor's voice crackled through. The fleet is ready, Admiral. We'll keep their reinforcements busy. You just kill that queen. Understood. Beginning our approach. The strike force accelerated toward Vex Prime. Immediately, the defense platforms opened fire. Organic projectiles, acid streams, and bioelectric weapons lashed out at the approaching ships. Chen's ship shuddered as impacts struck the hull. Armor plating melted and buckled but held. Around her, other ships were not so lucky. 3 vessels exploded in the first 30 seconds. Keep formation, Chen ordered. Get us to the surface. They plunged through the defensive fire like bullets through rain. Ships died by the dozens, but the survivors kept going, kept pushing forward. This was the human way. Accept the losses, achieve the objective. Captain Wu's transport took a direct hit that sheared off the entire port side. Half his team was vented into space instantly. He sealed his helmet and kept giving orders. All remaining personnel prepare for combat drop. The transport crashed onto Vex Prime's surface, sliding across organic ground that tried to absorb it. Wu kicked open the emergency hatch and jumped out, his remaining Marines following. Around them, other transports were landing or crashing, disgorging warriors onto the alien world. Chen's ship was one of the last down. She emerged to find a battlefield that defied description. The ground itself was alive, trying to pull soldiers down. The air was toxic and thick with spores. Vextor drones poured from organic structures like ants from a disturbed nest. Form up, Chen shouted. We push toward the central nexus, move! 217 warriors had survived the landing. They charged forward as one, human and Concord fighting side by side. The Vextor swarmed them from all directions, but the strike force cut through them with practiced violence. Veshtal, the Concord warrior who had joined to honor his fallen brother, fought with a fury that surprised even the humans. He wielded a plasma cutter in each of his 4 hands, burning through drones like they were paper. For Krishna, he roared. the words transmitted through his suit's speakers. A human Marine fighting beside him grinned. That's the spirit. They pushed forward meter by meter, leaving bodies behind, both enemy and friendly. The cost was terrible, but they were getting closer. Above them, in orbit, the main battle had begun. Zeknor commanded the combined fleet as wave after wave of Vextor reinforcements arrived. His tactical display showed hundreds of bioships all converging on their position. Sir, we're outnumbered 20-1, his tactical officer reported. Voice shaking, Zeknor thought about the humans, about Admiral Chen charging into certain death, about Captain Wu and his Marines, about all the warriors who had taught the conquered what sacrifice truly meant. Then it's an even fight, Zeknor said. All ships attack pattern Chen 7. Let's show these creatures what we learned. The conquered fleet, once cautious and defensive, now fought with human aggression. They rammed damaged bioships. They detonated their own vessels to take out enemy clusters. They held the line not because they thought they would survive, but because others were counting on them. A young Concorde pilot, barely old enough to serve, found his fighter damaged and losing power. He could eject and be picked up, or he could aim for that bioship that was targeting a damaged cruiser. He thought about the human stories he had heard, about sacrifice and honor and doing what needed to be done. He aimed for the bioship. The explosion saved 37 lives. On Vex Prime's surface, Chen's strike force had been reduced to 93 warriors. They stood before the entrance to the Queen's chamber, a massive organic doorway guarded by the largest Vextor drones anyone had ever seen. This is it, Chen said quietly. Once we go through that door, there's no coming back. Anyone who wants to stay out here and hold the entrance, I understand. Not one person moved to stay. Then let's finish this, Chen said. They charged the entrance. The Guardian drones were enormous, each one capable of tearing a human in half. But the strike force had not come this far to fail now. They attacked with everything they had, weapons firing until they overheated, then fighting with knives and fists when ammunition ran out. Captain Wu lost his rifle to a drone that crushed it with one swipe. He drew his father's knife and jumped onto the creature's back, stabbing until it fell. Around him, warriors died by the dozen, but they kept fighting, kept pushing. Beshtal lost 3 of his forearms to acid spray. He used the remaining one to activate a plasma grenade and throw himself at a Guardian drone, detonating both in a flash of light. For Krishna, he whispered, as the light took him. For all of us, the entrance fell. 21 warriors remained. They entered the Queen's chamber. The chamber was vast, cathedral-like, with walls that pulsed with bioluminescent light. And at the center, the Queen waited. She was massive, the size of a building, her body a fusion of biology and nightmare. Thousands of neural tendrils connected her to the Vextor network, making her the mind of the entire swarm. She spoke, not with a voice, but directly into their minds. You are impressive prey. You fight well. When I consume you, your aggression will make my swarm stronger. We're not prey, Chen said, raising her weapon. We're humanity. And you just made a fatal mistake. And what mistake? You threatened our friends. The final battle began. The Queen's chamber filled with drones, but the strike force fought through them. Chen coordinated the attack, directing fire at the neural tendrils, trying to sever the Queen from her network. Captain Wu led a team into the chamber's depths, planting antimatter charges on critical structures. He lost people with every step, but the charges kept getting placed. Chen herself fought at the front, her armor scarred and melting, but she kept firing. A massive tendril whipped out and caught her, slamming her against the wall hard enough to crack ribs. She felt bones break, felt blood fill her lungs, but she did not stop. She activated her suit's emergency power, overloading her weapons output, and fired directly into the Queen's main neural cluster. The Queen screamed in their minds, a sound that dropped several warriors to their knees. But it was working. The tendrils were failing. The connection was breaking. Wu reached the final charge location. Only 3 Marines remained with him. Set the detonator for 30 seconds, he ordered. Then run. Sir, 30 seconds isn't enough time to get clear. I know, Wu said quietly. He placed the charge himself and activated it. Go, that's an order. His Marines hesitated, then saluted and ran. Wu stood alone in the chamber's heart, watching the countdown tick away. He thought of his father, of all the humans who had died fighting. of Krishna and Veshtal, and all the conquered warriors who had learned to die like humans. Not bad for a species that was supposed to be quarantined, he said to himself. The charges detonated. The entire fortress world shuddered. The Queen's chamber collapsed inward, killing everyone still inside, including Admiral Chen. But the Queen died too. Her consciousness shattered across thousands of bioships that suddenly found themselves alone. Individual. Mortal. In orbit, Zeknor watched his tactical display as every Vextor ship suddenly stopped coordinating. They began fighting erratically, some fleeing, some continuing to attack but without purpose or strategy. They did it, he whispered. They actually did it. The combined fleet, battered and barely functional, pressed the attack. Without their queen, the Vextor were no longer an unstoppable force. They were just animals, dangerous but defeatable. The battle lasted another 6 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. By the time the last bioship was destroyed, the combined fleet had achieved total victory, but the cost was staggering. 2 weeks later, on Terminus Prime, the memorial service was held. 47,000 humans had died, 23,000 were missing, presumed dead, 89,000 wounded, many permanently disabled. The conquered losses were similarly devastating, but for the first time, they had fought alongside those losses instead of retreating from them. Ambassador Thelaxis stood before the assembled crowd, human and conquered together, and gave the eulogy. We called for warriors, he said, his voice carrying across the silent gathering. We called out in desperation, not knowing what we were summoning. We got humans, Deathworlders, from a quarantine system, and we feared them almost as much as we feared the Vextor. He gestured to the memorial wall, where names were being inscribed. So many names. But they did not come as conquerors. They came as protectors. They taught us that strength is not about avoiding death, but about making death mean something. They showed us that courage is not the absence of fear, but action despite fear. And they proved that sometimes survival requires sacrifice.